The Biden administration seems adamant to undo the policies and the efforts of the Trump administration on the U.S. border with Mexico. And President Biden met virtually with Mexican President Lopez Obrador on Monday amid the migrant crisis and as the new administration has taken steps to roll back Trump-era immigration policy.
In the meeting, Lopez Obrador proposed a new immigrant labor program to Biden, which could bring 600,000 to 800,000 Mexican and Central American immigrants a year to work legally in the United States. For reaction, we're joined by our panelists, John Fleming, former Louisiana Republican congressman and former assistant to President Trump. Also welcoming in Democratic strategist and attorney Kelly Hyman. And finally, Dino Scaros, presidential historian, immigration attorney, professor and author of this book on your screen, Trumped Up Charges. Good to see everyone here. Let's just start it off by playing you this sound from yesterday's press briefing with Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas at the press conference yesterday on border policy. Listen to this.
Implemented. We are progressing every single day. I don't have a particular timeline, but all I can do is communicate both to the American public and to the individuals seeking protection that we are working around the clock 7 days a week to make that time frame as short as possible, but they need to wait. But they need to wait with a particular goal in mind. We are not saying don't come. We are saying don't come now because we will be able to deliver a safe and orderly process to them as quickly as possible.
All right, so this is the message to migrants. We're not saying don't come, we're saying don't come now. John Fleming, is this the right message to be sending in the middle of a pandemic right now?
Well, the Biden administration is contradicting itself. Spent 2 years campaigning on let's open the borders, come on across, we'll welcome you in. And then once the Biden administration is in power, they're saying, yes, come, but just don't come now. And then how does that work in the face of American children can't cross the street to go to their local school, yet the Biden administration encourages children from Mexico and further countries south of the border to come into the United States without any sort of evaluation to see if they have COVID or if they're COVID positive. So this is really, I think the Biden administration has created a big mess for itself.
I just want to back up to the actual statement that Mayorkas is giving, saying, hey, don't come now. Who's he telling that to? Just the reporters? Because they are coming now. So clearly the message isn't getting there. You ask, how do you know that? I'll tell you. Right now we have the highest number of arrests at the border on record in January. You know that more than 13,000 unaccompanied minors will be here by May. They are coming. That is fact. Kelly Hyman, how is that message resonating past the press briefing room?
Well, I think it's important to remember that everyone has a right to protect our borders. We need to be smart about that as well. I mean, he said definitely don't come. We need to make sure that our borders are safe and secure. But we have to remember that our country is made up of immigrants. And what Trump did with the children, I mean, people were separated from their families, and that shouldn't happen. But I think it's important to remember that Biden said that when he met with a Mexico president, that you have not been a good neighbor. And I think that's important to remember. They are a neighbor, and we need to cooperate with them, but we need to make sure that we protect our borders.
At the conference, Homeland Security Chief Mayorkas was also asked if there was a crisis at the border. Here's his response.
Do you believe that right now there's a crisis at the border?
I think that the answer is no. I think there is a challenge at the border that we are managing, and we have our resources dedicated to managing it.
So as Sean was saying, thousands of minors, mostly from Central America, they're traveling for weeks without their parents to enter the U.S. illegally and then request asylum. And Mayorkas insists that that's not a crisis, it's simply a challenge. Dino, how are you seeing this?
First of all, the way asylum works is if you really have a well-founded fear of persecution, that is the standard, a well-founded fear of persecution in your country, you can then go to the next adjacent country to you, which in many cases would be Mexico for a lot of these folks, not the United States, and go there and apply for asylum. That's not what's happening. This is an open invitation. This is like if you live in a rundown neighborhood in Detroit and you say, I want to go to Beverly Hills and apply for asylum because it's a nicer neighborhood. That's not the standard for asylum. Number one, it has to be based on a well-founded fear of persecution in your country. And number two, you go to the next closest country. You don't just forum shop and say, oh, I want to go to America.
I want to go to, I'll go to John Fleming on this next topic, but what is a crisis? What constitutes a crisis at this point? It seems to be, is there a certain number of migrants that are coming over? Is it a certain number of unaccompanied minors that are coming over? Is 13,000 unaccompanied minors, is that not a crisis? If we care about children being with their families, wouldn't that indeed be a crisis rather than, it's a challenge?
Well, the Biden administration just simply does not want to admit that it has a crisis. We recall those caravans, thousands of people coming from Central South America in the latter part of the Obama administration, the early part of the Trump administration. President Trump is the only one who solved that problem, and he did so by getting Mexico to volunteer to keep them on their side. That slowed down the flow, that stopped the caravans, and also to ensure that people do not get across the border without applying for asylum first, rather than coming across the border, then applying for asylum, and then they dissipate into the population, never to be seen again. So President Trump solved this problem, and President Biden now is completely unwinding this and bringing us back to where we were before, which was a disaster.
We're out of time. I'm going to leave it right there. John Fleming, Kelly Hyman, Dino Scaro, stick around. More to get to.